Good evening, guys. Let me just catch up a little bit. Just find the feed. There we go. I'll pin that to the top. Hi, guys, and welcome as always to Live and Undrugged, Series 2. It's great to have you here. I will put up my sponsors at the end of this podcast. This evening, I am very blessed to be speaking to Hollywood actress Kathrine 𝐍𝐸𝐫𝐥𝐚𝐧𝐝. Some of you may know her from the Dhar Mann videos, which are really big on YouTube. I'm going to be talking to Kathrine about her life and some of her work. Hi, Kathrine. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having me. This is going to be fun. I can already tell. Yeah. I can already tell you're going to go deep. So let's see.
Like to go deep. Yeah, I like to be honest. We have an honest show here, and I think people appreciate that. I just want to take you back to the start, really, the start of your journey. You weren't always from Hollywood. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing and you know, how you ended up in Hollywood, really.
Well, I grew up in a small town of 9,000 people in a very cold place, Minnesota, or sometimes I would joke Minnesota. Yeah, lots of below zero temperatures. You know, I never quite felt like I fit in there. I felt like a square peg in a round hole and just couldn't, I don't know, I just couldn't wait to kind of leave that place. But yeah, there came a time when I graduated high school and I was going to Bible college, like a correspondence course where they'd send you the stuff, the homework, and you'd send it back and all that. And I just felt like God was telling me to move to California and become an actress. And at first I just rejected that idea. I was like, what are you talking about? I never even did a play in high school. How could I think I auditioned for one and then I didn't get a part. So I thought, well, I must be terrible. So, you know, what would the point be of doing that? But finally that just voice, that gut feeling, it wouldn't relent. So I drove to Hollywood, loaded up my car, and 6 hours after I got into town, I had my first audition. I've had over 800 since, and I've had fun being in more than 150 productions, not counting the more than 100 episodes I've done for Dhar Mann. And it's been a fun and challenging journey for sure.
Yeah, it must have been. I kind of dipped my toes into the into the film business. I occasionally get asked to go and consult on a certain lifestyle to certain like directors and things. I was very, very lucky to have been able to kind of get thrown into the fire for Joanna Hogg and Martin Scorsese for the Souvenir, where I play Ray, and I got to speak to the actors about my life and kind of do this. But you know, I've played a serial killer for CBS and things like that, all from a sleepy little Norfolk town in the UK. I don't think I could handle the heat of Hollywood, let's say. I think it would affect me really quite quickly. There must be a lot of negativity there.
There is, but I feel like you find that anywhere. Truly. I mean, I think whatever you go looking for, you'll find. But I mean, things are heightened for sure. Appearances, how you want to come across, people faking their lifestyle or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of trickery, a lot of magic stuff. Yeah, but that, I don't know. I feel like with the prevalence of Instagram and people making their page look perfect and photoshopped, and I I just feel like that's kind of everywhere now.
It is, and I struggle with it. Being a parent, I do struggle with it. You know, I have teenage daughters. I have a teenage son. You know, all right, the boy's not really into Facebook or Instagram and stuff, but my teenage daughter is, and you know, I dip my toes into it and I look at it and I say, are these people presenting their life in a certain way with the flash cars and you know, the photoshopped Photoshop pictures, and which is a bugbear of mine anyway. You know, I wrote a book about exploitation, and I think it is.
Is that the book Between the Street Lights and the Red Light?
It is.
Or is it a different?
No,
Okay.
It's the same one. You know, in that book, I referenced the fact that you know, human trafficking is in a lot of places and it's masked as a lot of different things. You know, it's not just sexual slavery, it's exploitation of you know, a lot through Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, through photos, and you know, I've done an expose on it. It's a dark world, and it does concern me as a parent. It concerns me not just as a parent, but as a person. And there's no regulation there.
Yeah.
And that really kind of concerns me as well. When we first got talking, I downloaded your book because in your book, you know, you do a lot of poetry, but you speak about, there's quite a powerful picture for the front of the book of you, and it's about plastic surgery, and it's about you know, the way that people present themselves over there. That's the one. It really was a striking image, and you know, when I read it, and I was kind of blown away by your honesty, and you know, it says in there that when you saw it from when you got there, how has it affected you? How has it affected your journey? All these people and this, well, I won't say epidemic, but you know, all these people changing themselves, looking younger and things like that. How do you?
Well, it's not even just Hollywood anymore. I remember watching an award ceremony once, and you know how they always have the comedic people come out in between when they're calling people up on stage, and they were saying who's sitting in this section and who's sitting in this section and who's sitting in this section. And then the host, he circled 3 people in this huge audience, and he said, and these are the only 3 that haven't had plastic surgery here tonight. Like, there's 3 people out of everyone. Actually, I think it wasn't even as broad as plastic surgery. I think the 3 he circled said, and these are the only 3 with their real natural breasts here tonight. You know, it's like a joke. And hearing a director say once, you know, they were razzing this director saying, how come you don't write more roles for women over 50? And, you know, they were getting mad because there's such this youth culture in Hollywood. And he said, I've tried to do films with 50-year-old women, but there's no 50-year-old women in Hollywood that look 50. And I thought, wow, he's right. All the 50-year-old women in Hollywood look 35. Think of them. You know, J-Lo and Sandra Bullock probably fits in that category. He's right. There are no 50-year-old women who look 50. It's such a different thing now. And not that there's anything inherently wrong if you want to like fix yourself up. It's not even about that. It's like the way I look at it, we're spiritual beings. We're living in this earth suit, having this human experience, and no one would think twice if you wanted to scrape the paint off your house and paint it or get new shutters. And it's like the same with us, if you want to like fix yourself up in some way, okay, no big deal. But I think the problem comes when you don't love yourself and you feel inadequate and you don't feel like you can shine, or you don't feel like you have worth or value anymore just because you get a couple lines on your face, or just because you gain 10 pounds, or just, people start to feel like they're nothing, or they don't matter anymore. They get to a certain age or a certain weight and they become irrelevant. And I have experienced those times in Hollywood where the casting directors are telling me, oh no, you're too fat for this role, you're too old, you're too pale, you can't play this really messed up person because you're too pretty. But so there's been like times where I've been too much, but then I haven't been enough, or it's like it's when they're constantly judging you by this outer package, it's hard sometimes not to think, well, is that all I am? So I can see it from both sides. The like, hey, just embrace yourself. You are who you are. You've got wisdom, experience, okay to age. But then I've also seen the other side where like, well, if you don't try to keep yourself the best possible, and if you focus only on your insides, you're going to get rejected and, lose jobs because of it, especially if you're an entertainer. So you'll be passed over by someone who looks the part.
Unrealistic expectations. Yeah, I mean, I've never been to I've been to one casting session ever in my life. But I know many people that are in the business over here, and it's just as brutal, I believe.
Yeah.
And, I have friends that, I have a friend that has a group of clinics for aesthetics, as they say. And that's all fine, whatever people want to do. But I worry, where do you stop? An eye lift, or I had to have a nose job because I had my nose broken really, really badly. That's I think that's the closest to cosmetic surgery that I've ever had. Aesthetic surgery, to straighten it and plate it and things like that. But where do you stop? You see these Hollywood actors and actresses, and they've got fillers in the lips, eye lifts, perhaps tattooed eyebrows, breast implants, cheek implants. Where does it stop? Where do you draw the line? Where does Hollywood draw the line on that? Do they?
Yeah, they do. There's been some actresses who've done a lot of stuff to themselves, and then because it was too much or too extreme, they haven't gotten work after that. So they were so scared about not having the youth anymore that they went through extreme measures, maybe too much, maybe it didn't turn out, and then it backfired. And because of that, they're not getting hired or not having the work. But as far as like what is too much, what has gone too far, I think it really has to do with your insides, because I'm just going to tie it into, I remember one time my pastor was speaking about money, and the scripture, the love of money is the root of all evil. Money in itself isn't bad. Yeah. Just like maybe getting work done in itself isn't bad. But when you become obsessed with it, anything that you put above God becomes an idol to you. And if that chase to keep your youth, to keep a tiny waist, to keep looking a certain way, where it's come to the point where 16-year-olds are getting bunches of stuff done. Years ago, it was just like, okay, once you turned 50, maybe you got a little lift, a little something. Now we've got teenagers going in to have things done that they don't need to have done. And everybody, like on Instagram or whatever, are starting to look the same. They all have the same sleek hair, the same eyebrows, the same big lips. Like they're all, it's like we're turning out like bunches of little robots of automatron sex dolls or something. I don't know. Just so people will be accepted. And I think no amount of work you get done is going to make a difference if you don't love yourself.
No.
It's going to be pointless. It's not going to fill that hole in your heart that only God can fill.
I agree. I do agree. I do think that there needs to be more regulation on it. I do think that there needs to be more focus on, if you are having certain works done, then you need to see somebody to have a mental health check, because I don't think that, I'm not saying everybody that has lots of plastic surgery have got mental health issues, but
right,
surely, like, going that far into it and that deep into it, that's it is your mental health, that body dysmorphia, that I look into the mirror sometimes and I see my face a lot on these, and I've thought, yeah, maybe I don't know, but maybe the cream to sort out the skin and that. But then again, if I did that, where would it stop? I know for me, I have an excessive personality. I do things in excess when it comes to drink or other things, and I end up in a certain way. And I'm pretty sure that if I was thought like that and was chasing that, I would be the same down the middle of the road with plastic surgery and body sculpting and stuff like that. I think I need to lose a bit of weight, but where do you stop with that as well? It's, I don't know. I try to teach my kids that beauty comes from within. And it doesn't really matter what you look like on the outside. It's just how you treat other people and how other people treat you. But they go to school and then they have these influences of the other kids at school and things like Instagram and all these photos that are sculpted by an artist, whether it's actual cosmetic surgery or whether it's airbrushing. It's all the same to me. It's all going a bit too far. I really do struggle with it, because my kids see that and they think, well, why is my body not good enough? Why don't I look right? I'm not a size 0. I'll never be a size 0. Right. And they believe that, but they see these ladies and men of all ages that stand up on Instagram with the money in hand, or the lip fillers and the lent against the car, unrealistic body images. That was the reason that I chose that I took the photo for the front of my book, which is a striking, not an object, written on the back of a lady's back, because men are objectified too. But the thing that strikes me about Hollywood, and not just the film business, but the whole thing about Hollywood and Instagram and this whole subculture that goes around, is that it's it's getting dangerous. And what can we do to kind of educate people around there, apart from doing things like this and speaking open and honestly? Because, you know, I think you were brave for writing your book, because I don't imagine there are many people that will go against the grain in Hollywood. Fair.
Yeah. I am writing a book about Hollywood too. We'll see. Showing some of the really unfavorable, unsavory sides. A lot of different sides. But yeah, I think, you know, they've done studies on this. They've done research where they had like a group of guys rate photos, like photos of normal women, and rate what they look like. And they did like a study where they had people watch a TV show first, like maybe just a news program, or I don't know, just a regular TV show. And I think this was back in the 70s or 80s. And then they would show them these photos of the girls, and they would rate their attractiveness. Then they had groups of men watch an episode or two of Charlie's Angels. Right. Which had the 3 gorgeous women, and then they brought out the same photos and had them rate the attractiveness of the women. I'd suspect after they watched an episode of Charlie's Angels, all the men rated the women as less attractive than the people who just watched a regular show before that. So, but there's like the pressure, even like newscasters nowadays are looking like movie stars. Like you can't even be like a person that tells the news without having to come across super glamorous. And I remember maybe it was 8 or 10 years ago, I was with the director and we were working on a film project together. And he really took like a liking to me, like wanting to take me under his wings and help me with my career and all that. And he just kept saying, no, it's too bad you didn't get started earlier. It's really too bad that you're this old now. And it's, you know, I don't think you're at the age you are, you're not going to make an acting career. This is 8-10 years ago. So I looked pretty good back then. And he was like, maybe I can get you to be a newscaster. Like I could see his wheels were turning, like he was trying to figure out, what can I do with someone as old as you? And it was this bizarre thing. And I was looking at him like, what are you talking about? I don't want to do the news. Like that's not my thing. But he just could not see how I could possibly like have an acting career as old as I was eight years or so ago, 8 or 10. And so it's bizarre. It's twisted. It's morphed. And I had this experience myself after being here a number of years. And seeing all the gorgeous people every time I go to audition, everywhere I go, I'm surrounded by people from all over the world who were told, you're gorgeous, you should move to Hollywood and become an actress or model. So like all the most beautiful people in the world come here to cash in on their looks. And I remember watching a documentary, and I'm watching this documentary and I'm like, and I remember having this conversation with myself, like, oh my God, where did they find all these ugly people to interview in this documentary? And it dawned on me, like, these are not ugly people. It was like the people who watched the Charlie's Angels and then had to rate regular women. I had been so used to seeing all the most gorgeous people for every day for years that when I saw just a normal looking person, I was like, ooh, where'd they find these ugly people? So I've even fallen for that trap of what we see constantly, what we surround ourselves with. You know, you can say that about appetites. You can say, well, if you're used to steak or filet mignon, you're not going to go eat hot dogs. It's everything. We can get accustomed to seeing all of this. But the problem is then then we start thinking our partner isn't good enough, our spouse isn't good enough. We start complaining about how our girlfriend looks, how our boyfriend looks. We start looking in the mirror and being dissatisfied with ourselves, being down on ourselves, doubting our ability to accomplish anything, to achieve anything, because we're not enough. So it's this cycle that can lead to depression, and it can lead to anorexia and everything, you know, the desire to keep changing and moving and shrink that waist and don't eat. And I mean, to the point where people aren't even drinking water because they'll see the scale go up and then their organs are failing.
Yeah. And I've seen that on a personal level. Yeah, I know people that have gone through anorexia and bulimia, and it's not pretty. It's not, you know, it's very hard to deal with. It's really hard to deal with on a personal level, and see someone tearing themselves apart like that. You know, the only way that I can sort of kind of link onto that is the fact that, you know, I've had my vices, and that, you know, my
Right.
way of life affected people in such a way, and that, you know, they saw me in such a way, and they saw me do such and such, and that must have been really hard for them. And seeing someone pull themselves apart, seeing someone think that what they are is not normal, and then that unhealthy body image turning into dysmorphia, and then that dysmorphia turning into anorexia and bulimia and you know, God knows other things. It's a hard thing to digest, and all because of the way that people want to fit in or look. You know, like you, I felt I couldn't fit in for a long time. I couldn't, you know, give a rat's backside anymore whether I fit in or not. But there was a time when I really wanted to fit in, and I really tried, and I really felt so alien. And so I can kind of understand how some of these people, especially in the unrealistic expectation that is Hollywood, and feeling that way, because it's not just their unrealistic you know, how much harder must it be when you've got somebody saying, well, actually, you are a bit bigger than the average, you know. You've got shifty eyes. I think, you know, your eyes could be lifted a bit, or, you know, your nose is a bit crooked, or, you know, you could do with a bit filler in your chin. You know, you'd look a lot better. You would, you know, and you probably get more, you know, more castings, and that's not the way to live, and that's not the way to go. And I understand the fight and the want to get somewhere and to do something and to achieve. But where do we stop, and where do they stop? It doesn't seem to, and it seems to get worse. Hollywood, London, you know, Soho. And you're there. You're right at ground zero, and you see, like you say, you see it every day. I don't see it every day, you know.
Yeah. It's really, we just have to look within, you know, like you said, it's fine to do whatever you want to do to look your best, but it's really, you know, where are you finding your satisfaction? You know, are you seeking the praise of men? Is somebody else's opinion of you going to be what you live your life by? Well, this director said, if I don't lose 20 pounds, I'm not going to get the role. I told the director recently, I was like, well, then hire someone who's 20 pounds lighter if that's what you want. I don't see anything in the script that says she's like a prison camp survivor, or she's supposed to be. The role doesn't require a certain size, but if you want that aesthetically because you think that's going to draw a bigger audience, hire someone else, because I'm not going to go through that trauma and that stress of like, oh, I do this for someone else. And yeah, there are times if you get a role in a big movie, it's required that you lose or gain or something, but that's the choice. The actor has the choice. Do I want to put my body through that? We've seen great actors who pack on 60 pounds for a role or lose 60 pounds for a role. And, that's a creative choice or whatever, but constantly having to jump through hoops to please someone else, you have to be happy with who you are and come to terms with this ever-changing face and body you have, and be okay with who you are. And once you're okay with who you are and you love yourself no matter what, then okay, if you want to do a little this, a little that, like I get highlights in my hair, I get little blonde highlights, there's different stuff I do to look better. But when I wasn't loving me, it didn't matter how much stuff I did, it wasn't going to cause me to love myself. So I think it's really about looking in, coming to peace with what you've done, who you are, your past, and like laying it all before God and saying, take this garbage, help me forgive myself. Because a lot of stuff we're running after and chasing is because we think then we'll be okay. If I do this, I'm finally going to be okay. If I do this, I'll finally be worthy. But that's not where your worth comes from.
No, it's not. It's not. Do you ever, because you are so open and honest about all this, do you ever get labeled as difficult?
Not to my face. I haven't heard anyone say that. Maybe they just don't hire me.
Well, because
No,
when I've been honest, I've been labeled as difficult. When I've told the truth, I've been labeled as difficult. Or when I've refused to do something that is against the grain that they want me to do, that I think is morally against what I believe. And if I refuse to do that, I get labeled as difficult. So I can only imagine what it's like to be a woman in Hollywood who will quite happily and bravely stand up there and talking about going against what is now the social norm, and speak the truth. And I can only imagine that you might, some people might think you're a bit, too honest, or label. I know people that have been labeled difficult that are far from that. They're honest.
Yeah, I mean, I have been in the situations in Hollywood with people of clout, people who could make a difference in my career. People, it's possible that I could have had a bigger career and could be more well known if I had done some of these requests by people at the top who could, open doors for me. But I, in good conscience, couldn't do their requests, if you know what I mean. So yeah, and they would give me examples. Well, so-and-so did that, and that's how they got to the top, and so-and-so did this, no big deal. This is what we do. This is like, casting couch situations. And I most certainly could have been in a better place with my career, but then would I be able to live with myself? Would I be able to look in the mirror? Would I be able to stand before God one day and say, I did my best? Or would I have caved into the pressure? So I guess I would rather be at a place where I have peace in my life. And I think even more so than like talking about the superficial stuff in Hollywood, what I see is people that don't have peace. And there's no money you can pay to have that kind of peace that surpasses all understanding, that guards your heart and guards your mind. I can go to sleep. I don't have drama. I don't have stress. I don't have, what did I say to this person? Could I get this? Did I tell this? Okay, what's my angle? Am I going to sabotage this girl at the audition so I can get the role instead of her? This constant competition. I got to beat this person out. And I'm just like, the stuff that God has for me is for me and me alone. Nobody can take it from me, not even Barbie's clone. Care how perfect you are. I don't care what you're going to do in the casting room situation. If God has something for me, you can't take it from me. I don't care how you're trying to sabotage me. And if we could all get to that place of belief and trust and knowing that God's going to work all things out for us, that he's going to turn what the devil meant for evil into good. You just let go of it all. It's not this constant, oh, I'm not going to, I've been in those situations where like my printer didn't work so I couldn't print out my script, and I'm in this audition room with girls that are going out for the same role. And there's a girl sitting next to me in the scripts. She just has her script next to her and she's looking at her phone doing whatever. And I'm like, excuse me, can I look at your script for a minute? I wasn't able to print mine. She grabs her script, folds it up and puts it in her purse. Like, so threatened that someone might, that I might get the role instead of her or whatever. Or I've had people come out of the audition room and see me and say, here's what the director wants you to do. And they'll tell me something the complete opposite. So I go in the room and I screw up. And I just thought they were trying to help me. So I was like, great. So there's people are not only is there not peace, they're in a constant state of fear, of loss, of missing out, or what if I trying tooth and nail to not let anyone get one over on them. And it's, to me, that's more pervasive than anything. The people don't have peace and they don't have joy. They have moments of happiness when something good happens or when they're living the high life, but then they go home and they're depressed and they're sad and they're questioning why they did what they did. And they're justifying, well, I had to do this to get ahead because I had to, and I live my life in such a way where I don't have to go home and justify anything.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. It's nice to be able to have a high expectation of self and a good self-worth. You mention a lot about God, and I know that your faith means a lot to you. As mine does. We've spoken of it before, but what's it like being a Christian in Hollywood and surrounded by all of that and that negativity?
Well, it's choices, it's choices I have to make, scripts, it's decisions that, aren't always easy to make. And, and sometimes, like, I have a friend in Hollywood who's an actor and he plays a lot of bad guys. And there's a lot of, bad guys usually have a lot of cuss words. So he's sometimes saying bad words in the scripts. And there's other Christians that will be like, how dare you? How dare you? Supposed to be a man of God. And, it is sometimes like, what is that separation between what this character of mine is doing on screen and who I am personally? Like, I don't swear in real life. Like, I don't know. People probably, they never hear me swear. But there are times in a film where I say swear words, and that shocks people sometimes. I'm like, well, that was that character and what they were going through. And, but like this friend of mine, actor Mel Novak, he sometimes gets roles where they want him to say JC or GD, and he won't do it. And he's been threatened to be fired. And it's been, he has lost roles because of it. But you have to know for yourself where you want to draw the line. And it took me several years to get to the point where I could openly speak about my faith and not be worried. I don't consider myself a Bible thumper, but I do, you know, if you look at my YouTube or my Instagram, I talk about God all the time. I don't feel like I'm shoving it down anyone's throat because it's my page. I can talk about what I want to on my page, you know? But you know, when you're in networking situations, you know, you have to just really feel out, is now an appropriate time? You know, you don't have to wear your faith on your sleeve or feel like you don't have to go around tell everyone, I'm a Christian, you should be a Christian, you should love God, you should, you know. I heard this preacher once say, you know, a light bulb doesn't go around telling everyone, I'm a light, I'm a light, I'm a light. It just shines. It just brightens the room. And sometimes that's all we have to do, is just shine, just brighten the room. And people will come up to you and say, why are you different than everyone else? How come you have peace right now when everybody else is freaked out? How come, you know, you just stand out when you have that comfort, when you know everything is going to be okay. And even if it's not okay, I'm going to be okay because I know the one who holds the world in his hand. So no matter what's going on in the world, I know who's on the throne. And no matter how scary it gets, I know he's got my best interest in mind. So I can have that smooth sailing where I'm not affected. And people sometimes take that as like, don't you care? But it's, you know, it's not that at all. I just have peace. Why should I stress out about a situation I have no control over? How does that even help it? All it does is put me in a spiral where I'm now not making the right decisions because I'm acting out of fear. And the moment we shift into fear, we're out of faith.
Exactly. I speak a lot about my faith, especially on there. As you said, it's my platform. So I should be allowed to speak about what I want to speak about. And a lot of my followers and my fans, they even though they wouldn't, you know, many of them would call themselves atheists, I think that, you know, a lot of them have said that they appreciate the fact that I'm honest and open about it, and that I don't actually ram it down people's throats. I'm not, you know, I'm not the sort of person that will stand there and shout in the face of someone and say, you should live like this, you should. I'm nobody. I can't speak about that. You know, the way that I live my life, what I can do is I can make suggestions and I can say, well, actually, you know, I was reading the other day, you know, and I came across this verse and it might help you in your situation. And that for me, you know, I love the Bible, and I always thought there wasn't a manual for life until I found the Bible and how to read it properly. And actually everything's in there that you need to know about, kind of spookily, and it's been a great help for me. And I've had a lot of people, you know, I've had gangsters on here, I've had people that have been in jail for killing people, I've had people that have been self-confessed terrorists, bank robbers, people in recovery, and they all say that God has been relevant in their life, whether they believe in him or not. And I think that that's a powerful thing when you can get a room full of broken people and they can all connect through that one thing, you know, God, that one thing, that one word. For some people, whether it's out of love or, you know, hey, it will always spark a conversation. And it, you know, that's why I love it so much, and I love doing this so much, because I get to find out about people's faiths, you know, and spirituality. I think it's very important that we have faith in such a difficult time. how has the pandemic affected you? How has COVID affected Hollywood?
I think it's affected us the same way a lot of people are being affected. Production shutting down, loss of jobs, things like that. Now, they just have a lot of protocols in place where they're testing you every day before you shoot, and you're wearing your masks and stuff on set. And they've now had, compliance officers. It's been bad because it's been the death of little films like that. Little films are usually what I work on. I've never done $100 million films, but so, having a compliance officer on set for COVID, if you've got a little film you're trying to make for $30,000, and now a COVID compliance officer costs $7,000 of your budget, that's, more than a quarter of your budget to make your film. And, it's really, I think it's stopped a lot of little independent filmmakers from able to showcase their crafts. And if you kind of look at what's coming out in Hollywood, it's super, super big budget movies, and the little sleeper movies, the little dramas, the little thrillers, horror films, you're not seeing that happen because those people have been squashed out. You don't have the big budget to afford like all the new COVID stuff or whatever. It's making it so the smaller filmmakers can't even make their films anymore. Yeah. And, there's a lot of stuff, with the pandemic that, there's people there's people that I know, people on all sides, people that are pro the vaccines and people that are anti. And, the studios have all made rules that without it, you can't work. So I've had people confess to me, like, I don't think there's been enough testing. I don't know if this is safe. I don't know if I should take it, but if I don't, I can't work. So there's also that like fear, like their lifelong dream is on if they don't comply. And, so I think it's beyond even like the physical aspect. There's a lot of mental anguish going on because of it too.
Yeah. I mean, it's we're not too bad in England at the minute. And I've been on sets that have had COVID officers and stuff like that. I've been quite lucky, but it's been quite easy, especially doing the supporting artist stuff. But I also know a lot of people that have been greatly affected by when we first locked down and then we locked down again, and all the confusion about what you were allowed to do and what you weren't allowed to do. It has caused a lot of smaller companies, a lot of the smaller independent filmmakers to falter and fall. And I think it's really, really sad, because I love to see independent movie. That's my bag. I love independent movies. No budget, low budget independent movies. You'll see all the VHS in the background. A lot of them aren't big budget Hollywood films. A lot of them are some of the smaller budget Hollywood films are British films, because I have an affinity for that, and I think that we're coming close to losing it because of all the politics that is running in the film industry in Britain, and I suppose over in the States and everywhere. I love the New Zealand film industry, but New Zealand is shut. It's closed. Australian films, some of them are the best films that I've ever seen. Australia is closed, and it's just it's so sad to see. Our longest running soap, which is called, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Neighbours. It's been going like 36, 37 years. Australian, and it's always been on British telly. And it's been it's been pulled because I think some of it's to do with COVID, and I think some of it's to do with the companies not getting the funding that they needed, and that must have surely been affected by COVID policies over there in Australia, and here. And I just think it's really, really sad to see like an institution fall. It's not a nice thing to see, and I can see more things doing that. You know,
yeah, a lot of shops closing because the restrictions, you can only have this certain number of people now in your restaurant at a time. Also here in LA, I don't know what it's like where you are, but you can't go into a restaurant or get your hair cut or do anything unless you show proof that you've been vaccinated. So you have to carry this card with you to even be able to, you know, go to the movies, go to a restaurant, have your hair cut, whatever. So yeah, it's interesting times we're living in. And, you know, you could argue that they're just trying to do their due diligence. You could argue that it's, you know, tyranny. There's a lot of people's opinions. It's really inflaming, and it's the sad thing is it's separating a lot of people. And I feel like the enemy's tactic, you know, for years we were separated with racism, and I feel like this is like a new form of the vaxxed against the unvaxxed, or you know, creating these enemies where we're fearing each other. The people who are scared of those who have because of protein shedding. Then there's, you know, those who haven't, who are fear that you're gonna get them sick. And it's a lot of fear mongering. And I saw someone post something the other day that said something about who controls the media, you know, the money, the fear. They're feeding the fear. The you know, big pharma is feeding the media. They're feeding them fear, and fear is what makes people more sick. So the more sick you are, you know, then you need the big pharma to get you better. So it's like this cycle. Let's get you scared and get you sick and get you, you know. And I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I feel like I'm middle of the road, and I'm kind of just taking what I hear both sides saying and trying to decipher for myself, like which one seems more accurate, you know, where do I see myself fitting into this? And I don't see myself picking sides. I don't see myself picking right and left or this, or I just see myself trying to be like, God, what do you want? What is your way? You don't know what lies are being told to us. We don't know we don't know. So we just need to walk in obedience to what we hear God is telling us to do that's right for us, and just pray for the outcome of whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a big one here. You know, I don't think the rules are as heavy as they are over there. We don't need to show proof of whether we're vaccinated or unvaccinated. I do think we're under great pressure to get vaccinated. Receiving text messages pretty much every day, and emails, and you know, every time you look on Facebook, it's like, have you had your COVID jab and stuff like that. I'm personally double jabbed because I've got certain illnesses that I need to think, and I have had COVID. I had it quite bad. I was really quite ill, but I feel that I would have been a lot iller had I not been vaccinated. Whether I'll go for my third jab, I don't know. But you know, I've had two. But COVID is kind. Our government isn't the greatest government, and there's a lot of hypocrisy, and there's a lot of saying things that are not happening. And as a country, we are, you know, we're not going to be forced to wear masks soon. We're not even going to be forced to isolate soon, even if we have got COVID. and I know it's scary times for some people. And, I pray into that. It's affecting my church greatly. Pretty much all the leaders are now down with COVID. But, by the grace of God, they're all sort of recovering and getting back to normal. I think it's going to be, COVID is going to be a big part of life for many years to come. I think it's just something we're going to have to get used to. I understand you've got kids. You're a mother as well. Is it one that is of special needs? What's that like?
Yeah, my 14-year-old. I mean, technically, my 3-year-old has also been diagnosed with autism, but I'm kind of not. It's not that I'm sticking my head in the sand. I just don't see it. I just don't see it, because I see my older one and I see the big difference. They were both born prematurely. My older one was almost 4 months early. So that caused a lot of issues. My second one, I got so sick. It was an emergency C-section 10 weeks early. They had to take him out of me because I was going to die. I had put on 100 pounds within a few months, and I had such edema. I had preeclampsia. And so I got to the point where my organs were shutting down. My liver and kidneys weren't functioning. I was going into heart failure. My lungs were filled with liquid. I couldn't breathe. They thought I was going to have a stroke. It was like, when they saw that, they told me it was the worst case of preeclampsia my doctor had ever seen. And he's been doing this for 30 years. They were actually really surprised they didn't lose me. And I was in, the cardiopulmonary unit. So it was both times that I gave birth was pretty traumatic. The first time more, I think, for my son, and the second time more for me. But it was certainly a challenge raising a special needs child. He's 14 now. We've come into a good place and a rhythm, and the expectations are different. But when he was first diagnosed, it was a lot of, I don't know if I want to use the word mourning, but it kind of fits. Mourning for what he'll never become, mourning for the things he'll never do, thinking about the rite of passages he'll never have, because initially the doctors were telling me he would never walk or talk. So you're thinking about, he's never going to be a dad. He's never going to give me grandchildren. He's never going to go to college. He's never going to play football. He's never, all this, when you find out you're pregnant or you're having a baby, you're just flooded with all these, like, what is their life going to be like? How is this, when it shifts to, he's never going to be able to do any of those things. Or, your mind is really good at playing worst case scenarios. And then you're thinking, I'm going to have to take care of this child for the rest of my life. They may never, and so it really did a number on me mentally for a number of years. And I was angry with God for a while. And I was even resentful towards this child who had nothing to do with it, had nothing to do with it. And it took a long time for me to, like 4.5 years, for me to come to terms with being okay with who he was and what my life was going to be like. And yeah, it was difficult. And it's interesting because one time I was sharing about some of the difficulties on Facebook many years ago, and this woman got so angry that I was sharing the difficulties, because she was like, how dare you say that raising a special needs child is a challenge? You should be so joyful and grateful, and it's a blessing, and how come you can't say? And I was thinking to myself, boy, I felt really bad for expressing that I wasn't always joyful and grateful for this, gift God's given me. So, I stopped talking about it for a long time, and I still don't really talk about it all that much. I'm being more and more open, but like some people, their whole life is based around their special needs child. They have their whole social media pages, mom of a fill in the blank child, wheelchair bound, paraplegic, cerebral palsy, autistic child. Like their whole identity becomes tied up in a diagnosis. And I thought, I don't ever want that to be my thing. I don't ever want me to be like, oh, I'm the mom of the special needs child. It's just like, then he's having I don't want him to have these labels. He didn't even know he was special needs till he was, I would say, at least 8 or 9, maybe 10. I just never brought it up. We never talked about it. We just did life the way you do life normally. And I was not the one that'd be like, oh, honey, you can't do that because, there's certain things where I had to have him be careful because he does have cerebral palsy and he does fall down a lot and wears leg braces and sometimes uses a walker and a wheelchair. But I wasn't going to be the one to put limitations on him. And I feel like that sometimes I see parents do that. They try to put their kid in a bubble so they think they're protecting them, but then they never get to experience the ups and the downs of life. So it's been a challenge, but it's only made me better.
Yeah, I can understand that. I have kids that really struggle with anger issues sometimes and behavior, and it gets difficult, and I don't always feel blessed. I know that the life that I have is a blessing, because I didn't always have this life, and I've had people tell me I should feel it's a blessing. It doesn't always feel a blessing. Yeah. It's hard. Right. It's very hard at times dealing with it, and I don't always deal with it the best way that I can. And I sometimes shout and I stamp my feet and I do the angry dad, but it could be a lot worse for me. Right. So yeah,
there's one, counting your blessings is one thing, but you don't always feel like you're blessed. You don't always feel the joy. And I think it's okay, to have different emotions. God gave us our emotions. We have to be at a place where we can have the balance, though, of not letting our emotions run us. But if we keep suppressing them and pushing them down, it's like that beach ball that you push it underwater, and the further you push it down, the more it springs up and the higher it goes. So it's okay to feel like, oh, this is hard. But yeah, to have that balance of counting your blessings, but yeah, this is coming with it, and I'm unsure, I'm angry, I'm tired, I'm sleep deprived. I don't know what's happening. I don't know if he'll get better. I don't know if my prayers will be answered. There's a lot of uncertainties, but trusting that God's still holding you in his hands and the situation is going to work out has made all the difference.
Yeah, it does. I have trust in God. I don't always exercise that trust. I'm not the best at handing over. I know they say surrender to win. That's not always easy, because A, I'm British, and B, I'm Northern, and C, I'm stubborn. So I do need to give over to God a little bit more. I think my life might be a little bit easier if I did. Yeah. Can you tell me about Dhar Mann? You work a lot with Dhar Mann. What's that
Mhm.
like?
It's a lot of fun. So for those who don't know, that's they make small little short films that are kind of morality pieces, or how to
Yeah.
treat each other, how to judge a book by its cover. And I think he's made over 500 videos now, maybe close to 600, who knows. I've been in over 100 of them, which so far is more than any other actor. Um, it's fun. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful growth, and to be able to be in films that you can show your kids, because there's
Yeah.
a lot of I've been in that I'm like, you can never watch this film. You could never see this film.
Yeah.
You see mommy screaming at zombies and chopping their heads off and swearing, and that never needs to be part of your life. Um, oh, it's nice to be able to do something like that you can. And I think more now than ever, probably for the last 10 years, it's really been on my mind, what legacy am I leaving? And I'm happy to say, being part of the Dhar Mann episodes and that series, it's like I can go, this is something that is making a difference in the world. I see it
Mm.
from, the messages I get every day on social media about how people really enjoy these episodes and how much it's changed them or made a difference or stopped them from hurting themselves. Or, it's nice to be part of something that doesn't just have entertainment value. Yes, it would be really super fun
Mm.
to be in a $100 million movie where things are exploding and there's green screen and I have a slow motion running sequence, that would be super fun. But I can say, these little videos that some people might think are cheesy or cringe or whatever, they're actually making a difference in people's lives. People are changing, they're accepting themselves, they're accepting others, they're doing things differently because of this. I couldn't say that for a lot of the bigger budget things I've been in. It hasn't been life changing. So, Dhar Mann has this slogan, we're not just telling stories, we're changing lives. And may sound corny, but it is true. It's true. And so, I can enjoy it and embrace it. And I've had people in Hollywood judge me because, oh, like, what are you doing those little things for? You're not like a Hollywood actress anymore. You've like sunk to this level where you're doing little after school specials on the, people can be very judgmental, but I don't know. I'm enjoying the ride and I like it and I like the difference it's making. And I feel like people care too much about prestige or being seen as being in the in crowd. So to some people in Hollywood, I might be, they think that maybe I have lowered my standards, but it's just so silly, because you could be in an awful like a movie with a terrible message, full of stars, full of, there's some very popular movies that are so sending the wrong messages, that, you know, what am I leaving behind? That's
Mm.
what it's about, the legacy I'm leaving behind. So I'm enjoying it. I don't know why I went into that whole spiel about, but people, the Hollywood snobs do see you differently. Like, what are you doing now? And I've gotten messages from them like, what happened to you? You're so talented. Like, why would you be doing this? So, people are always going to be critics.
Well, of course, of course. I mean, I became aware of you, you and you work with Dhar Mann and stuff through my children. They, every Saturday morning, guaranteed, they'll sit there on the TV and it'll be YouTube and it'll be just Dhar Mann, one after each other. They know that I'm interviewing you, and they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, this is the only interview that I've ever done, I think, that my kids have raised an eyebrow at. It's kind of given me a little bit of credibility, which is good with them, which is great. I did want to, I am, I know that we haven't got a lot of time left, but I did want to talk to you about one of the Dhar Mann films that you did that greatly affected me. And it's The Girl Finds Out She's Adopted film. And I saw it, it came up, I saw it, and I watched the trailer, and I thought, I don't know if I can watch this. I was told on my 8th birthday by my parents that I was adopted, and that for me set me on a life journey of trauma. That was my first trauma, and that for me then set me on a darker road, which took a long time to come away from. But I watched it anyway, and I identified a lot with it. I found my real family. I have a great relationship with them. Didn't always. That was, some of that was detriment to me losing communication with the family that brought me up. I am now back in communication with them, but that was hard for them. I admit, and it was hard for me. It must have been hard for everybody, but that really affected me on a deep level, because for me, adoption was my first. It was the first time that I felt like I wasn't wanted. I know I was loved, but I wasn't wanted by someone, and that then I don't know, I guess it set me up for just trauma after trauma. It was kind of like bowling of trauma. It was just trauma after trauma after trauma, and that's the first trauma that I remember. It might have been ones before, but that was the first thing that really sort of affected me. And I wondered if you making that, if it affected you in any way, because it is a tough subject to broach. And I know that the kids, like the young girl, who's a great actress, by the way.
Yeah, she.
She played it really well. But you could see the pain, and did that affect you in any way?
It was such a great piece, and I was honored that they considered me for that role. I know many people who are adopted and felt the same thing, that they weren't wanted. And I have one friend in particular that, because of that, it set her life constantly in bad relationships with men, because she was always trying to get the man who didn't want her, always doing everything she could to bend over backwards to, if she could get someone who didn't want her to want her, then she would be something. So doing that role, I was, I'm pulling from several people I know that have the story of, how do I fill that hole? How do I come to terms with the people who gave birth to me, not wanting me? And I wish kids would get, like, their parents would get them counselors when they're going to tell them that kind of information, so you have someone to talk through it, to walk you through it, because as a child you don't have the wherewithal to make sense, and you're going to constantly be saying, what did I do? Why am I not good enough? Why did they not want me? And you don't realize, as a child, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you or your worthiness. It's something going on with them. So, working with that great cast, Colin and Sophia, top-notch actors, they could easily be Oscar winners one day. They're just, it was a real electric environment, but shooting that was difficult at times. And you know, the little girl actor, Sophia, you know, her mom is on set and her mom had to like leave. She couldn't even, it was so traumatic for her to see her daughter go there emotionally. And it was, you know, shooting things like that, it's sensitive. It brings up a lot of emotions. It brings up a lot of past trauma for people. You know, I'm at a place in my life now where I like to question more things before I allow myself to go somewhere emotionally. You know, I'm always talking to my coaching clients and people who come to my YouTube channel where I make inspirational videos about raising your level of emotional intelligence and not letting your emotions whip you back and forth. So whenever I see myself going to a place of despair or feeling not worthy, not wanting, whatever, I have to stop myself in my tracks and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is causing me to feel that? And a lot of times we ask ourselves the wrong questions. Like you maybe asked yourself why they didn't want you. And we don't know that we're asking ourselves the wrong questions. It's like when we do something silly and we mess something up, we say, gosh, why am I so stupid? Why can't I do anything right? Well, the moment you start asking those questions, your brain and the devil are really good at coming up with all these reasons why you're not good enough, why you're so stupid. So we have to, instead in those situations, say, gosh, well, that didn't turn out. What could I have done differently? What could I have done differently so this wouldn't turn out this way? And then your brain's going to start coming up with the correct answers. Oh, you could have done this. And when we feel some emotional trauma, why didn't they want me? And instead we turn it around and ask different questions like, I wonder what they were going through where they felt like they couldn't take care of me. I wonder what kind of trouble or turmoil they had going on, you know, and all of that, it takes the emotions, it takes all of the sting out of it. We have these trying times, and like if someone is a victim of violence or, you know, somebody hurting them or whatever, it's easy to wallow in that pain of why me, and not even consider for a moment, gosh, that person must, I don't know what kind of trauma they've been through where they felt like they inflict me. And even getting to the point where, yeah, you have to get healed from it, but even getting to the point where like, I gotta pray for that person so they don't keep doing that to other people. And it's I think we get to a bad place in life when we put everything on us and we don't stop to turn around and question why did this happen, not why me, you know, what could I have done differently? And I think that has helped me not live in that place of emotion and sadness and you know, being a victim. It's turned me into a competent survivor and not a victim of circumstances. So giving yourself the power back. I don't know if this is kind of a roundabout way to answer that question, but I feel like so much was tied into that. And I do think it greatly affected the people on set, even the people behind the camera watching, you know, Sophia pour her heart out in the search. And I do think that film, Girl Finds Out She's Adopted, even affects people who aren't adopted, because there's always something you're searching for. There's always that feeling, that need to fit in, even if you know who your parents are. Where do I fit? Where do I belong? What tribe? What group of people? What should I do with my life? Where do I belong? So I thought it was really potent and powerful.
Yeah, I must admit it affected me for longer than I probably like to admit, really, because, you know, I could identify with a lot of that pain, but I could also see it. You know, I've got stepchildren, and I know how difficult it is being a step parent and them not being yours, and despite wanting them to be.
Yeah.
And you know, that opens up a whole can of worms. I think as a as kind of as an empath, being able to feel things on a deeper level, it's a blessing and a curse. I wasn't always able to feel that way. And then God turned my heart tender. He took this man that wasn't a very nice man, and he took this man that society said was no good, and turned him into something new. And you know, I know you know a little bit about my journey, and it was like, you know, he's led me on this path of discovery. And you know, I like a lot of what you've said tonight, because it comes down to identity, and that's something I'm working on now. You know, I'm looking at who we are as people, who we are as parents, and who we are as children of God, and what is the sort of biblical truth about adoption and identity. You know, and I know that we're prince and princesses of heaven. I know this. I didn't always. You know, yeah. I'm training in theology at my church, and because I'm doing that, I'm able to find out more about my identity. My growth was stunted for various reasons, and I didn't start to learn who I really was until I was 38 years old. I'm now coming up to 45, and it's been a journey. It's been difficult. It still is difficult to a certain thing, but you know, it's all a learning curve. It's all an education.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's absolutely great. I love doing it, because God's got a lot in store for us. So what's he got in store for you? What's next for you?
Well, this year I'm going to be releasing an online course called You Are Worthy, and it's something having to do with self-worth that really I've got 3 books, but it really stemmed out of the book that you were referencing, and about our worthiness as found through God and our identity with him. So it's really going to help a lot of people with their confidence of being able to walk into any room and feeling like you fit and you belong, because you know who you are, because you know whose you are. And, you know, I've got a level 1 and a level 2 with 12 video lessons, and it's going through, you know, all the stuff from the exterior to the interior, being sure of who you are, making the best of what God's given you, knowing you were made on purpose for a purpose, that you are God's favorite creation, that fixing the outside won't help an inside problem. You know, just digging deep down into the layers where you can come out feeling confident in who you are, and being able to, you know, discover your worth, know your value, and become who you were meant to be. So you have the courage and the confidence to go after your dream. So that's the big thing for me this year. I've been working on it. I started writing it in 2018 and 2019. I filmed in 2020 and 2021 and been editing it for over a year. So it's a long process. It's like making a feature film. It was like full feature length script. You know, I've got hours and hours of content. I've got so much that I want to share. So that's my big thing, is the You Are Worthy course. And for all your guests, I want to give everybody a copy of this for free. You can download this book, which is my memoir of how I went from self-hate to self-love, by just going to poeticprescriptions.com/free book. poeticprescriptions.com/free book. Maybe you can put that in the comment.
I will link it.
Yeah. So to me, that's the big thing for me this year. I'm going to continue to work on Dhar Mann. There's other films I'm working on not related to that. Festivals coming up. I've won a couple acting awards this last year. I'm working on a memoir about my 14-year-old and the time we spent 118 days in the neonatal intensive care unit and what that was like for me, and the PTSD I got from that whole situation of him being on the brink of death. And, you know, I've got my hands in a lot of little things, other films I'm producing and working on. But for me, that's the big one. It's because it's the one that's going to leave the biggest mark, I think, to heal people from the pain of not feeling like they're enough and finally realizing they have everything it takes to succeed in life.
Yeah, that's brilliant. We need more of that. You know, we need more people to step up and create more content like that. That is stuff that I aim to create myself one day soon. You know, I love when people take power over their lives, and they you know, I always say, if you can teach, teach. If you can't teach, teach, because it is a gift. It is,
Yeah.
if you've lived a certain life and you've gone through things that have been profound in so many ways, I think it is not just a blessing and an honor, but I think it is a duty to be able to speak out and give a voice to those that need it, and be that voice for those that need it if they don't have the ability to do that. So I love it. I love anything to do with recovery, anything to do with you know, building self and you know, identity. I will link that in with this, and I'll put it across all the platforms, and it'll be on jwgregg.wordpress.com as well.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll link it all, and we'll try and get you some students. I think that would be great. I'd love to get you on for a part 2 a few months down the line. I've really enjoyed talking to you. You know, I know you're very busy.
Yes, just saying, I gotta hop to
yeah.
my next appointment.
Yeah, so I you know, I respect that, and I'll let you go in a second. I'm just gonna wrap up like I usually do. We'll have a quick debrief, and then I'll let you go on about your day, if that's all right.
Okay.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, as always. I see that there are a few comments that I will look at and I will reply to in a little while. I love it that I have a followers that like to get involved in, you know, when I'm doing these live. I'm so blessed and so thankful for the life that I have and the ability to be able to do this, and you guys keep me going. So I'm going to say thank you, guys, and I shall see you again next week. Cheers, guys.